Hello and welcome. So, knitting and crocheting are quite nice, sedate hobbies. And when I first started doing them, I assumed that the community of people that were doing these crafts would be drama free. And I suppose it's probably a symptom of social media as well, but there is quite a lot of drama that goes on. I do try and stay out of it. I don't tend to comment on videos very much, but I am a passive bystander of a lot of drama on the internet. Um, but I wanted to touch on pattern stealing and what that actually is and sort of whether that's bad or not. Now that doesn't sound good when I say it like that, but there's a drama that I'm thinking of that was probably within the last 6 months. I'm very late to the game on this video, but there was a creator called Annie Germain who made a pattern called Sailor Slippers, which is a knit pattern. I think it was knit flat and then sewed together and then felted, and it was stripy. And it was very, very popular, very much all over YouTube, all over TikTok and Instagram. A lot of people were trying the pattern and putting their results on. I think the virality of it had was helped by the fact that there's such a big transformation because the socks socks no slippers are knitted huge and then felted in a washing machine to make them the right size. So I think that kind of lent itself well to becoming viral because of the look at this massive thing, they probably make it about this big and then it gets shrunk down and then it's a normal foot size. And that pattern obviously went viral. A lot of people bought it. A lot of people were happy with it. They made them. It was a trust the process sort of knitting pattern. And then someone made a crochet version. I say a crochet version. Someone made a crochet pattern for slippers where you would crochet large and then felt it down. And it was also, I think, the images they used for a lot of them were similar in the aesthetic because they were stripy. And so there was a lot of discourse about whether that pattern was stolen or was a copy of the knitting pattern that was made by Annie. It's a bit of a nuanced argument because if you don't do either knitting or crochet, you wouldn't necessarily know that it's difficult to have a one-to-one conversion of one to the other. They both use very different techniques. The sort of the format of the weave of a pattern, the material that's made as a result is very different to each other. So even though the aesthetic of the crochet pattern being a stripy slipper and it also being a felted item lends itself to seeming very similar, there will have had to be a lot of work that went into actually working out how much yarn to use, how big you have to make something to make it come down to the size that you want it. Because obviously, different people have different sized feet. So you need to know and be able to work out in theory if there are different sizes of the pattern, how much bigger you need to make for a bigger size or how much smaller for smaller, so that you don't end up with something that felts down to the wrong size, because then that's a lot of work that's been done that then has to you can't even undo that because it's felted. That's it, it's done. You're going to have to find someone with that foot size to give that to and that sort of thing. But like I said, a lot of the discourse was, this a pattern that's stolen, or is it just an aesthetic that has been popular and someone has done another thing with it? Obviously there is a problem if people are purchasing a pattern that someone has made, repackaging it or slightly changing it, and then reselling it at a higher price or at a cheaper price so they can sell more because they've got the cheaper version, therefore people will buy that one instead of the more expensive legitimate one. Is it okay to make things that look similar to something else? It can be a bit of a nuanced and complicated conversation to have when you're talking about patterns, because the idea of a striped slipper or of a slipper or shoe or sock that has been made too big and then felted down isn't a new idea. The pattern that Annie Germain wrote was unique in itself because she worked it all out, but the idea behind it very much wasn't a unique idea. So it might not have even been a factor in the crochet version that was made. It might just have been, oh, I want to make a striped slipper. Like striped slippers and socks are all over the place. That's nothing new. And felting things is nothing new. And I think with the way that social media is, people are very quick to jump to a side in an argument, let's say, because they might have a parasocial relationship with the person who has been wronged, or even by the person who has, well, I say wronged, the person who is perceived to be wronged, or a parasocial relationship with the person who seemed to have done the wronging. You know what I mean? And so they'll form a bit of a mob and maybe go and flood the comment sections of this person's posts, or email them or inbox them and be horrible and mean, even if the person who said, I feel like I've been copied, has said, don't go after this person, don't do this, that, and the other. Because that's just, I think social media is very polarizing, and a lot of people seem to think everything is either one or the other. It's very on or off rather than something that could be somewhere in the middle. But if you, for example, take a pattern that you have bought and take another pattern and maybe even a third pattern, and you combine them together in some way, because you're using the techniques from those three patterns, if you then create your own pattern based off that, is that copying? A is that plagiarism in that sense? I don't think it is. I have in the past done that myself, not necessarily to make a paid pattern that someone else is paying me for afterwards, but things like, because of my size and how much bigger I was at one point as well, it can be difficult to find a pattern with something that fits my size. So I would take a technique from pattern A, I would take sizing from pattern B, and I would take another technique from pattern C and put it together. And that's how my pattern would formulate. Or I would take an idea from something that I'd seen, and then I would build my own pattern based off that without having purchased a pattern or found one that is for that thing. I've looked at something and figured it out. And that's another aspect as well. If someone can see a thing that you've made and without buying a pattern replicate it, have they done something wrong or not? Because I can't do it with everything necessarily, but I'm quite good at, with certain things, looking at something and knowing what technique was used to make that thing. So in theory, I could replicate it. And then I suppose the argument could be, well, if it's so easy to tell how it was done by looking at a picture of it, why would someone pay for a paid version of that pattern? It's like I said, it's a very nuanced sort of conversation, and it's difficult to have a situation where something is completely right or completely wrong. I think the completely wrong thing to do is purchase someone's pattern, repackage it, and sell it on as if it's your own. Like, that's definitely wrong. Like, that's like stealing someone's manuscript and then putting your own name on it and getting it published. Like, that is plagiarism. That would be wrong. I think these things can't be every situation like this is right, every situation like this is wrong. I think it needs to be looked at on its own merits per situation. But the trouble with that and social media is, like I said before, people will just brigade and attack people just because they have a parasocial kinship with one of the people involved in it. So I think maybe the way to look at it is, if you feel like you're stealing by doing whatever it is that you're doing, then it's probably wrong. And if it feels like it's stealing, pay for the pattern, even if you don't use it yourself. So thank you for joining me. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you'd like to find me elsewhere, the link to my link tree is in the doobly doo. Bye for now.